Talk to me a little bit about the reality of what it's like to have a net worth of $6 million and over 50 rental units.
Even net worth wise, to get to $100,000 net worth was hard for me, right? The hardest, I would say. And then to get to $1 million was easier. And then now I just hit 6 million. I think I made a video on it, but my net worth just in 2024 increased by $800,000. I didn't do anything.
Can you tell us why you ended up selling the mobile home park? For everyone who's already seen your previous video, knows who you are, they don't need an introduction. But for the people who have not watched you yet and don't know anything about you, can you let us know who you are and what it is that you do for a living?
Yeah, so my day job, I'm a pharmacist. Specifically, I'm a pharmacy manager at a pretty large hospital in Los Angeles. That's my daytime job. And after hours, I do a lot of real estate investing. At one point, I scaled up to 90 units of real estate. I recently sold my mobile home park, so I'm down to 52 units. And as you can kind of see behind me, I just moved into my new primary residence, which is why there's nothing in here. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Went from about $250,000 of student debt, from my last video, and built up a net worth of about 6 million now, just recently in 2024. So I did all that while working full time without any partners, and it just was me, myself, and I. So that's kind of me in a nutshell for those who are new.
Yeah. Can you tell us why you ended up selling all those units, the mobile home park?
Yeah. So, I basically bought 80 units in 8 months, which is insanely rapid, right? Like most people don't even have 80 units in their lifetime. And I was on this huge, massive scale movement for some reason. I was chasing 100 units, to be honest. And then basically I bought 2 apartment complexes, which are both doing great now. Fast forward to today, but the mobile home park didn't go so well, right? So you swing, you miss, right? Some you hit, some you miss. And this one, I broke the golden rule in real estate, which is location, location, location. I bought it in a rougher area. We can talk about some of the stories later, but it was a rough area, a rough demographic. Rents were only like $400 and oftentimes they weren't paying. And if you had to evict somebody, it cost you like $500 to evict them. So literally it cost me more than what they're paying me to evict them. But on top of that, after they leave, you have to renovate the mobile home, which may cost $1,000 to $2,000. So I was bleeding like $10,000 a month on that asset. Yeah. So believe me, like on paper, my net worth was high, but I was bleeding $10,000 a month, which was basically just sucking up all my W-2 income and all my income from my other real estate. So I just said, it's time to just sell this. It wasn't the right asset class for me. I had a terrible property manager and it just wasn't, bringing quality to my life, right? Like once you hit a certain net worth, your quality doesn't necessarily improve much. So decided to sell it. I took a loss on it. Unfortunately, I lost about $100,000 on it, but because I work at W-2, it just offsets my active income, right? So I just paid, if I'm making $200,000, for example, and I lost $100,000 on my real estate, it just lowered my income from $200,000 to $100,000. And if you're taxed at 40% like me, then, I just basically got back $40,000. So it kind of reduced my mistake by $40,000, but still, it just basically was, a slap in the face, and it humbled me, I would say, a little bit, but definitely much happier now that I sold it.
Now, you posted a video recently. I actually just saw it, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the reality of what it's like to, have a $6 million net worth and, a real estate portfolio of over 50 units. Because what people think is when they hear those numbers, it's like, wow, he must be really well off. And what they don't realize is that there are a lot of expenses that you have to incur. Like right now, you said you have to pay your contractor, right? The contractor who renovated the units that you purchased. So at the end of the day, after you pay your contractor fees or your contractor for the amount that he charged you to repair these units, you are, I guess, netting around $8,000 to $12,000, depending on the month, right?
Yes.
And then you also have to take into account all of the other expenses, like if you need to repair a broken toilet or the plumbing completely went off in one of the units or electricity went out or whatever the case may be, that has to be added into that equation. So at the end of the day, that $10,000, $12,000 that you're making might end up being maybe like $4,000, $5,000 if a major repair comes into the equation. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the reality of what it's like to have a net worth of $6 million and over 50 rental units. What is it really like for you and why haven't you quit your job?
Yeah, that's a great question. And And like when you go on YouTube, and I sold the dream too, right? Like if you told me like 5 years ago, hey Steven, you're gonna be worth $6 million, you're gonna own 50 units of real estate. The first thought that comes to your mind is number one, I'm not working, right? Number two, I'm probably living in a mansion. Number three, I kind of have that FU money for lack of a better word. But as I've kind of gone through the journey and built up a $6 million net worth, I own 52 units of real estate. As you alluded to, it does cash flow between $8,000 to maybe $12,000 a month. But what a lot of people don't realize is, like, for example, this past month, yes, I cash flowed $10,000 this month, but plumbing went out in my 20 unit apartment complex, which cost me $4,000, right? So now I just ate into my cash flow. But also on top of that, the money that you make, it's not like it's going to go towards my living expenses, right? That money is being saved to prepare for the next expense that will eventually happen, right? So if a hailstorm happened and destroyed my roof, that's $40,000, right? So that's 4 months of my cash flow. So don't get me wrong, like I am, like, relatively speaking, wealthy, right? I'm speaking from a position of privilege relative to most people. But what people don't realize is the point of real estate, it's to self-sustain itself. And then you have to find ways to, build other streams of income, right? So that's why I still work my W-2, right? Transparently, because actually by buying 50 units of real estate, I actually appreciate my W-2 more, because this W-2, you can put in as much effort as you want or as little effort as you want. And you get a stable paycheck every 2 weeks, right? So let me give the analogy. You have a C student and an A student, or a C worker, A worker. The C worker can do the bare minimum. The A worker can go above and beyond. But if you're union, you get the same raise, right? So it's not very motivating for people to go above and beyond, right? You just want to do the bare minimum, don't kill patients, and, get along with people, right? You do that, you'll get your annual raise. If you go above and beyond, you're not really incentivized. But in business or real estate, you're paid based on performance, right? So if I perform well in real estate, I can build up my net worth. So for me, I've done pretty well in real estate overall net, and it's built up my net worth, but I'm not guaranteed to win either, right? Like I could easily just lose. Like imagine my first deal was my mobile home park, and the first deal that I did, I lost $100,000. Would I be as encouraged or motivated to do real estate today? Probably not, right? But because I had some initial success, it gave me the motivation to keep on going forward. So that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that the point of the cash flow is to sustain that real estate, to hold it long term. If you have to build other streams of income to live today, right? So real estate's like future money. My W-2 and, business, YouTube, all the other side business income, that's for today, right? So if you can play that game, that's how you build true wealth, right? So that's why I still work. And that's why I do appreciate that stable income coming in, because it allows me to take risk on like my business, my real estate, and, doing YouTube or coaching or mentoring, whatever it is, right? Like it gives me a buffer. So I really appreciate it now more so than I did, I'd say 3 years ago.
I've interviewed many people in this channel, and of the people that I've interviewed, the ones that are most successful, I've noticed they have quit their job and they just focused 100% on the side hustle or the business that they started. And all of them have been successful in those endeavors, right? Like the one thing that holds me back is that I have a family, right? Like I have kids, I have my wife, but at the same time, it's just like you said, it's just, you have this sense of security, especially when you're in a volatile market like real estate investing. It gets scary when you think of possibly leaving your job. You're no longer going to have health insurance. That's something that you're going to have to pay out of pocket. But when you've built a portfolio as big as yours, once you get rid of the contractor payments that you have, you should have a healthy sum of money, right? Like how much are you paying on a monthly basis right now to your contractor?
Right now, it's just like $5,000 a month for 6 months, right? It's for $30,000 total. And I think maybe this might be the last month. But, I think to me, I'm just like ultra conservative, I would say. People think that I'm highly leveraged if you read on my comments. But they don't realize that like my debt to equity ratio is 50%, which is pretty conservative, right? And as you alluded to, eventually I'm planning on getting married and having kids, and now I have a mortgage, right? So for me, I need a lot of buffer to feel comfortable. And for me, it's a little bit different where like I feel like I can kind of do all the above, if that makes sense. Like, yes, I could go full time into my business, but I feel like if you only have like an allocated 2 to 4 hours, I'm really efficient in those 2 to 4 hours, right? Because I know I got to do this versus most people, what I do in 2 hours, they do in a whole day. So it's just because you're forced to be efficient, right? Like, I'm doing my day job and I manage 52 units of real estate, value add real estate. So I'm doing renovations. That's a full-time job already, right? And then on top of that, trying to build like, my side business of, YouTube coaching, mentorship. And that's another almost like kind of part-time job, I'd say. So it's something that I thought about, but I think just right now it doesn't make sense. And then once I'm married, I could take something called real estate professional status. So basically that's how people pay zero taxes, right? So let's just say I'm married and my future wife, she becomes a realtor or she becomes an assistant underneath me. I'm actually going to study to become a real estate broker, probably 2025, once things are a little bit more stable. And what's going to happen is she's going to like manage my real estate portfolio. She's going to become an assistant. So she just can open doors for people, right? Like they can be my clients, but she can open the doors. And what happens is together when we file taxes, we qualify as real estate professional status. So if I have negative $200,000 in real estate losses, but my income is $200,000, essentially they wipe each other out and I pay zero in taxes. So when I file taxes in April, I actually will get refunded my 40% tax. So I'll get $8,000 check back, right? So that's how people pay zero taxes. And, it makes sense because we're both pharmacists, right? She can be part-time, do real estate, and I'm still full-time because I'm in management. You don't have part-time managers, unfortunately. So that's something that we've been thinking about. And, I'm obviously reevaluating every time, but right now, it just makes sense to work and I don't mind working. And I still feel like between my PTO that I get, I take like 4 to 5, 6 weeks off a year anyways on pretty nice vacations. So I feel like I get that balance, and when you're fully retired, because I kind of experienced it a little bit when I was laid off, like you're not in the right mindset, to be honest, to want to travel and you have no one to travel with, right? Because everyone else is like working. Unless you and your wife are both retired, like you have no one to travel with, really, unless you want to solo travel.
Makes sense. So we're going to get into the numbers later, but I don't know if you can see this. Anyways, these are a whole bunch of cards and questions from Instagram.
Wow, I'm surprised you had that
There
much
you go. Okay,
response.
there they are. Okay, so I'm going to be asking you all these questions that they sent me on Instagram because I told them that I was going to be interviewing you today. And I've received, I think let's see, it's too many to count. There's like 2 pages full of them. So let's just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the blueprint to getting 50 units as an employee?
Yeah, so I basically did that. As I mentioned, I graduated pharmacy school back in 2013 with $250,000 of student debt, and the starting wage was $120,000, right, as a pharmacist back then. So, I graduated with a bunch of debt, 6-figure salary, and I knew absolutely nothing about managing money. Right. So for me, really, it was just to pay off your student debt. Right. So whatever debt you have, right. For me, it was student debt. I was fortunate. I didn't have credit card debt. I didn't have a car loan or anything like that. It was just student debt. So I literally just put my head down, grinded for 4 years at a W-2, slowly increased my salary from 120K up to about 180K from 2013 to 2017, and just paid off my student debt. I lived like I was poor, essentially, right? Like a poor college student, because I was 23 at the time when I graduated as a pharmacist, and you're still used to living that college mentality. So the first 4 years was just literally grinding at a W-2, not spending much, and then basically just paying off your student debt. After that, I just said, okay, what's next? And the most organic, natural step is you need a place to live, right? And I was 27 at the time. So I said, okay, well, I basically saved $60,000 to $80,000 a year to pay off my student debt. If you take that same concept, you can buy a house in the Bay Area for about 10% down, average price $800,000, right? So I saved up that 10% down. And then because you're a healthcare worker, you're a W-2 worker, if you pay off your student loans, you have a good credit score, right? So I basically qualified easily for buying a primary residence. So I bought that 10% down. Remember, I live in California back in 2017, $800,000. I put 10% down, which is 80K. And I actually lived in the master bedroom and then rented out the 3 other bedrooms. And once again, I was used to living with people, right? Because I was 27. I'm used to having roommates. It's actually too lonely for me if I lived in a 2,300 square foot house by myself, right? Doesn't make sense as a single guy. So I rented out the 3 other bedrooms and I got $3,000 a month, which basically covered my mortgage. So I was living in the Bay Area for about $1,500 a month, which is pretty inexpensive for the Bay Area, where rents are averaging, I'd probably say 3,000 plus, being nice, right? And then I basically repeated that process at least 4 or 5 times every year and a half. I bought my first property in 2017, bought my second one in 2019, my third one in 2020, my fourth one in 2021, my fifth one in 2021, bought my apartment complex in 2021, my mobile home park in 2021, and then in 2022, I bought my 20 unit. And how did I scale so fast? It's because during COVID, what happened? Interest rates dropped. When interest rates dropped to less than 3%, what do people do for real estate? They're going to overbid. So when they overbid, the value of your home goes up. So keep in mind, the first house I bought in 2017, $800,000. Fast forward to 2021, it's worth about 1.3 million. So in 4 years, I made $500,000 of equity, and interest rates are lower now at a 4% interest rate. So I did a cash out refinance. not only did I lower my interest rate from 4 to 3%, I pulled out money tax free. Well, it's leveraged. It's not really tax free. And I used that to then go buy apartments, right? So between all my single family homes, I pulled out $1.2 million of equity that I built up doing nothing. Honestly, I didn't do anything. I literally just bought it, held onto it, and rented it out. Nothing special. But I would say my time is a little bit lucky. I mean, who would have known, right? Like I didn't have a crystal ball back then. People tell me, "Oh, Steven, you got lucky. You bought in 2021 or 2017." But when I bought in 2017, people were saying, "Oh, it's going to crash." Like every year from 2017 all the way to like 2023, they're like, "It's going to crash." And then people in 2017 were complaining about, "Oh, I wish I bought in 2008." Right? So like to me, I'm just like, okay, I can either complain and say it sucks or buy this knowing I'm gonna hold this for like a long time. By a long time, I mean 10 years. If you do that, you're gonna minimize your chance of failing from real estate, right? And I still work my W-2. So, basically that's how you snowball and scale, right? Like even net worth wise, to get to $100,000 net worth was hard for me, right? The hardest, I would say. And then to get to a million was easier. And then now I just hit 6 million. I think I made a video on it, but my net worth just in 2024 increased by $800,000. I didn't do anything.
Wow.
I literally just sat on my assets. I did nothing. I just worked the job. I got this house, but like I did absolutely nothing. And my net worth increased by $800,000 doing nothing in 6 months. And it took me like probably like 6 years to get to even that net worth, right? And in 6 months I did it. So that's the power of like exponential growth and compounding. So that's really the blueprint, is just to be consistent, to start, and to constantly analyze your risk versus benefit.
Since we're in the topic of network, before we go on to the next question, I want you to just break down your assets and your liabilities so people can understand like what makes up your total net worth.
Yeah. So out of that $6 million net worth, $5 million is from real estate equity. So, obviously I'm heavily involved in real estate and done well with real estate. And then about $1 million is between, my cash, my 401k, and my Vanguard brokerages. So they're just like index funds. Cash reserves, I try to hold around 150k at all times. That's just my personal comfort level. I don't know why that is. I'm actually below that right now, so I'm trying to build it back up. But a lot of it's just 401k, and all I did, nothing fancy. I just maxed out my 401k every year that I work, right? Like averages about maybe 18, 20k a year. I have some whole life insurance policies that I max fund as well over 7 years, and just invest in Vanguard index funds like S&P 500. Really simple stuff, because all my mental energy goes towards my business and towards my real estate. I want my index portfolio to be my stock portfolio to be very simple. That's why I just buy Vanguard index funds and you dollar cost average it. So if we're breaking down net worth, about $1 million, it's just straight up in stocks, 401k, cash, and then 5 million is in real estate. And in terms of my debt, I have about 5 million in real estate debt. So I'm about 50% debt to equity. So 5 million in equity and then 5 million in debt. That's kind of where I stand today.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next question. So what is the best way to look for good tenants for your properties?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I would take a step back, and you got to find a good property manager, right? Because once you find a good property manager, they will screen your tenants for you. So for me, the key is finding a good property manager. So that's why I bought in Oklahoma. People ask me, why'd you buy in Oklahoma? I've never even been to Oklahoma or Alabama, where I bought my properties. I literally went there for the first time when I had my apartment complex under escrow, right? I flew there, did my due diligence. But why I went there was because I had a great property manager there. And I knew if I had a great property manager, they could make or break my deal, right? Like my mobile home park. Why did that deal fail? I had a bad property manager. Why is my Oklahoma deal doing well? I have a good property manager. That's literally it. So that's how I pick a tenant. But, it's hard to gauge, right? Like, I own 52 units of real estate. I get a lot of comments, I'm an evil landlord, right? Sucking up all the real estate market. Number one hate comment against me, but it's really a crapshoot. Like you have scanning parameters. So you look at their background, their rental history, their pay stubs. But, when you take over, they just can stop paying you. They can trash the unit. I've had that happen to me all the time. Like I had to evict people for non-payment. I had one tenant, take drugs and Sharpie all over the wall, right? I had a tenant who, I'm sure if I mentioned the last one, but they were bringing homeless people over, basically for homeless prostitutes over for food and shelter. So you had to evict them, right? And then because of that, it created a bed bug infestation, and it cost me $10,000 to fumigate the whole apartment complex.
Wow.
Right? So like people don't realize that like renting is significantly cheaper than to own. Like even to this day, I was renting in SoCal $2,000 a month. If I was just renting, I could be retired. I could have left my W-2. But instead, I'm locked into this mortgage back here in this house I'm sitting in, and it's $7,400 a month. It's not the greatest financial decision, but I just made that choice because eventually I'm a family plan as well, right? So it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense for me. me, and it's your personal decision. And I knew when I bought this house, it wasn't going to be the best financial decision, but I chose to make it still because I have options. That's the beautiful thing about owning real estate, about building wealth, is it gives you options to do what you want. So it doesn't make sense financially, but it makes sense more on a personal level.
Yeah, I do truly believe that if you're going to buy a house for yourself, it has to be a choice of like, it has to be personal choice as opposed to like an investment, a
Yeah.
choice for an investment. Because a lot of people don't realize that when you buy a house, unless you're living in that house for like more than a decade, it doesn't make sense to buy. Because I look at the home prices and the rent prices in New York City, for example, because that's where we want to move back to. If you want to buy an apartment, like a condo, that's a 3 bed, 2 bath, you're looking at spending at least like $1.5 million. And that's just on a decent, and like in a decent neighborhood, barely decent neighborhood. So the mortgage on something like that is, let's say, maybe like $7,000 a month, something like that, $7,000 to $8,000 a month. And then if you want to rent a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, you can rent one for like $4,500. So you're basically saving half of your income by renting as opposed to owning. So, I mean, the people that say owning is a good investment don't really calculate the numbers at the end of the day. They don't take all the numbers into account.
Exactly. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because, same thing, right? Like, and in renters, what they don't realize, if something breaks, I just put a work order request in, right? When you own a house and that thing breaks, you are the one paying for it, right? So, renters have a fixed cost, right? When I was renting, $2,000 a month, fridge breaks, I put in a work order. They replaced that fridge, it's $800, nothing out of my pocket. Now, if my fridge breaks, I have to pay $800 to fix it. So that's what people don't realize. And that's why I don't get all the hate for the landlords, right? I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I'm getting paid $500 a month for this unit. If you break the fridge, I'm paying for it. I just lost that month's worth of rent. If property tax goes up, if insurance goes up, who pays for that? It's going to be the landlord, right? So this is why we have to kind of raise the rents in order to get the money to take care of the property. So we obviously don't want to raise rent to be evil. It's just more to cover our costs so that we can take care of the property to give people a good experience. Imagine if I didn't have $10,000 to fumigate my apartment, there'd be bed bugs everywhere. So, and not fault to me, right? It was one of my tenants who brought in. So it's really the pros and cons that people have to weigh. But if you do make that decision, there's a lot of extra numbers that people don't realize. And I think a lot of people making these comments maybe don't own real estate or own a home yet. So they don't know. You're just used to like, oh, I'm used to paying $2,300 a month, easy, right? It's flat. And once a year, you might get a bump, if at all.
So how many times have you had to evict a tenant?
Oh, I've evicted many. Usually my property manager deals with it. In my California single family home real estate portfolio, I self-manage that. My tenants have been great. It's been the same tenants the whole time. So even though my California real estate portfolio, you break even at best in California. Like, my mortgage here is $7,400. I can't rent this house for $7,400. At best, I can rent this out for like $4,000, but you're losing $3,000 a month. So in terms of evicting, I would say you evict for so many crazy different reasons, right? Like I do C-class apartment complexes. So that's kind of more workforce housing. So kind of think about your typical, kind of minimum wage workers. Maybe they work at Walmart. Maybe they kind of work manual labor jobs. And, you see a lot of weird stuff, like people take advantage of it. Maybe they got laid off and now they can't pay. They're not going to pay you their rent. And then you just, Oklahoma, I give you a 15-day notice and I evict you, and they usually just leave. So people for non-payment, like I said, I evicted someone because they were bringing homeless prostitutes over because they broke the lease. Tenants would destroy the property and you would evict them. Right. So it's just like anything you can think of, I've probably been through. So you do have to have a lot of thick skin in order to want to invest in real estate, because you will see some crazy stuff. Right. But maybe because I work in a hospital and you do too. I mean, we see crazy stuff every day. So relatively speaking, it's kind of the norm for us. But like, for example, I think in my mobile home park, crazy story. Like we had a dumpster because we're renovating it, and we were next to a gas station, and people stole the dumpster on my mobile home park and used that to rob the gas station and stole all their liquor, threw in it, tied it to their pickup truck, and drove away with it. Right. So just like stuff like this, like you deal with that you just see on like TV shows, like that's almost daily. And I only own like 52 units, which is relatively small. Imagine those who own thousands. You see a bunch of crazy stuff. So it's definitely, you need thick skin and you cannot let it get to you.
That's the funniest story I've heard so far. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a question here from actually is the previous guest that I interviewed. Her name is Shabeli, and she is an anesthesiology assistant. It's actually one of the most popular videos that I have on the channel right now. It's a 1 out of 10. So she asked the question, have you ever considered investing internationally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I struggled with something called shiny object syndrome. I think any entrepreneurial person struggles with that. And over this past year, when I deviated from what was successful for me, I lost money. So let me give some examples, right? So I made money by buying California single family homes. I've made money by buying apartments in Oklahoma. And anytime I deviate from those two things, I lost money. So what's case in point? Mobile home park. I deviated. I lost $100,000. Number two, I invested in an independent retail pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist. It makes sense. What happened? I lost money because it's so hard to make money as an independent pharmacy. That's why you're better off working at like CVS or Walgreens or a hospital like me. I lost, I think, $30,000 on that one. I invested in an Amazon dropshipping store from Ryan Panetta. He had a store called Lunar Ecom. Put $30,000 in there, and I lost that money so fast. Right? I closed that store down, and he shut it down too. I think, and he never talks about it anymore. I thought it was quick, easy money. I lost money. Right? So because of that, I kind of steeled my resolve to like, I just only want to buy where I currently own real estate. Like, why start over and buy somewhere internationally or even in another state when I have a team, I have a system in Oklahoma, I have a team, I have a system in California. Why would I deviate from that? So if you asked me that 3 years ago, I'd be like, oh, interesting. I would look at it. But now, after getting slapped in the face this past year, I'm a little bit more diligent. So I don't really try to veer too far off from what's made me successful, right? Because it's already hard as is to manage a 52 unit real estate portfolio. If you were to add additional complexity to it, I think, who said it? Maybe Alex Hermosi, simple scales, fancy fails. Right. So I want to keep it as simple as possible so I can scale versus getting too fancy. And then that's when I'm going to lose money and fail and be stressed. So I haven't looked at international real estate.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And this has happened to me before with shiny object syndrome. It's like I have it to another level because I don't know if you saw any of my previous videos, but there was one point where Monica and I wanted to start a children's clothing store. And we thought it would be a good idea to go back into, because I used to drop ship like way back in the days. And I thought maybe we can go back to that and eventually brand the company, turn it into a brand as opposed to just a drop shipping company. So what I said was, okay, let's start something that you're going to be interested in as well so that I can manage the advertisements, the marketing and all of that. And you can focus on like gathering the products, everything else that basically managing the store. And Monica was like, okay, maybe we can do a children's clothing store. That just seems like the best route to take because we kind of both like fashion. I mean, we don't spend lavishly on anything like that, but we do enjoy looking good, right? So we enjoy dressing our kids good as well. So we decided on a children's clothing store. We ended up finding a mentorship group, which was $6,800, and we paid into it. And it was great. Don't get me wrong, it was amazing. But as I was going through the classes, our coach would tell me that, or he asked me at one point to come to our audience back on YouTube because he knew we were nurses. He was like, first of all, I don't know why you're even here because you have a huge audience of nurses who are interested in nursing and finance. So you should go back over there and ask them what they want from you. And I did. I came back and I asked our audience if we should continue with this, clothing store for children, or if we should start a clothing brand for nurses to riches, or if we should start like a mentorship program for nurses, a coaching program. And then there was another one. And like 78% of the people chose the coaching program. So then I brought this back to the mentor and he said, listen, I don't know what made you think that buying into this coaching program for clothing would be the best way to go, but I can help you start your coaching program. And then I attended the sessions like that he had. When you have these coaching sessions, there's several people in the sessions. And if people buy into a coaching program, they buy it for a specific reason. They want to buy into it because of what the mentor marketed it as, right? And if he's marketing it as a coaching program to help people start their own clothing brand, then that's what people are going to want to be in the meetings for. Meanwhile, I'm here going into the meetings and I'm asking him for advice on how to start my coaching program. So it kind of like, I felt like after a while, it wasn't the best value of his time and everybody else's time for me to go into the meetings doing that every single week, right? So I told him, I was like, I am so sorry. I apologize for doing this to you, but I'd like to have a refund because you led me in the right direction. And I'm glad that you did that. And he was more than willing to give me a refund because he understood too, because he knew that I wasn't going to get any value out of it at that point, knowing that that's not what I wanted to do anymore. That happens to me every now and then. Like I wanted to get my real estate license at one point, and I even have the books. No, the books are actually right over here. Right over here.
Oh my God.
That's
Yeah.
what I use to prop up my laptop now. And I was trying to get my real estate license because Monica and I, we love real estate and we love touring homes. So I figured if I get my real estate license, a lot of the people that watch our videos want to move to California, especially like Sacramento area. So I thought maybe I could get my real estate license. We can make videos about us touring different homes in the area, talk about what it costs to live here, how much it costs to buy a home, what the mortgage looks like. And then if anybody's interested in moving out here, not that that was my intended goal, but if anybody's interested in moving here, they could use me as a real estate agent. That's what I thought. And then we had too much going on at the time, like that coaching program, like our son who we had to drop off at school. We had to pick up our daughter at school. It was too much, right? And it's constantly, I'm always like, next thing, next thing, next thing. And then, you know what? I even took Python classes. I thought, okay, let me take Python classes because I don't know if you've seen my spreadsheets, but I have these spreadsheets. They're elaborate. They're amazing. Like for nurses who are interested in working in like the highest paying hospitals in California, it allows them to filter the results by the position they want to work in, whether it's per diem, night shift, evening shift. It allows them to put in the years of experience that they have and also how many hours a week they want to work. And now I've included one that allows them to add overtime hours to that and double time hours to see how much they would make on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or yearly basis, right? So I thought maybe I can create a program to allow me to automate all these things. So let me learn Python. So I started taking private Python classes, and that lasted about 3 months before I realized I had no time for it.
Yeah.
Because as you probably know, which is really hard, trying to manage a YouTube channel as well as all these other things at the same time, you have real estate, investments, you have a job. And in addition to that, I have those things, plus I have my kids. I'm trying to work on the spreadsheets. I'm trying to work on my website. It's too many things. So, just like you have to remain laser focused. You can't spread yourself too thin because when you start doing that, that's when the thing that you really cared about the most begins to fail, right? And I think that's what I've noticed with us. Like when I start spreading myself too thin, I don't see any one of those things doing well enough for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that because that's where everyone struggles, right? Like you rather be good at one thing versus or great at one thing versus good at like five different things.
Yeah.
And also it starts to compound, right? Like you said, in real estate, yeah, I was grinding the first couple of years, but now I just did nothing and I made $800,000 in net worth, right? And it's because I just stayed still. So literally, the more rich and successful you become, it's a matter of saying no to everything and keeping your eye laser focused on that one thing. So it's hard, right? It's very tempting. I see a bunch of stuff too, like, oh, I could do this, I could do this. And as you build up a higher net worth, you have more opportunities that start to come to you that you may not have had. And that's why for me, like if I take on something new, and like I said, I want to be a real estate broker, that might be a shiny object for me too. But I'm trying to leverage that to just have my future wife be assistant underneath me so we get the tax benefits. So worst case, it's that, right? But it might be shiny object for me too. But it's just being, laser focused on that one thing. And then if you can do that for a long period of time, that's how you build true wealth. The most successful people is just doing one thing for a long period of time. Like look at Warren Buffett. He's just been investing since he was like 10 all the way to like, I don't know how old he is, close to 100. He's been doing this investing for 90 years. And you can do something for 90 years consistently, you'll make money out of it. So like for me, if I start something, it has to be sustainable for the rest of my life, right? So like my YouTube channel is not as good as yours, but I don't edit, right? Like I literally don't edit. And right now, for the longest time, it didn't make sense for me to put money into like editing because it just didn't make sense. But can I just pop up my phone and record a 10-minute video before I go into work every day? I could. So for me, it's just doing something that's sustainable over a long period of time. And eventually over time, you organically improve. Like same with real estate. You start off house hacking, buying out of state, buying apartments, right? With YouTube, maybe just start recording and then maybe you get better lighting, better sound, better editing. The way you communicate is better. So it's just small, subtle improvement over a long period of time that determines success. That's really it. That's the one key factor in being successful in anything. It's just consistency over a long period of time with small improvements throughout the whole process.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go and ask one more question and then I'm going to ask my personal questions. Okay, the first one I'm going to ask is, would you be a pharmacist again if you had the option to do so? Or would you advocate not going into pharmacy?
Ooh, that's a great question. The pharmacist salary average right now is, I would probably say close to $200,000. You're like in a big metro city. So like, for example, I think Kaiser in Southern California pays the pharmacist on average $95 an hour, which is I think about $200,000. I think up in NorCal, it might be like $100 an hour. So relative to nursing, based on what I see from your stories, it's a little bit less than nursing, but it is a more less labor intensive job. It's kind of is a desk job in the hospital. Like we're kind of at the desk for the most part. We'll check the drugs being made. So it's nicer in that aspect. But would I go back? It's hard for me because I think for a while I was saying I actually would prefer to be a CRNA. I actually said that a while back because it's a master's level degree and it pays very well. You have really good hours, and ultimately you're under an anesthesiologist, so it's a little bit less liability in that aspect versus being a pharmacist. It's a little bit saturated now, to be honest. There's so many pharmacy schools opening up, and for every job that we post, like there's no ratios for pharmacists, right? It's not like one pharmacist for like 5 patients, right? Like nursing, it's kind of arbitrary how many pharmacists we have because we can kind of cover a large window, but it's hard to say. So part of me says no because of all the schooling, all the work, and relatively speaking, the pay isn't that great in California. Nurses are heavily compensated well in California, Bay Area, Sacramento specifically, where you're at, right? But if you were to go to like Oklahoma, I think like how much pharmacists make relative to nursing is a nice margin. Right. So I would say in California, probably not. But if I was in a different state, I would say yes. But what I really appreciate about being a pharmacist is that pharmacists were very system and detail oriented. And I think that translates very well into business. It translates very well into entrepreneurship. So I think thanks to my skill sets I developed as a pharmacist, it helped me build my real estate portfolio. It helped me with like my businesses that I'm working on as well. So it's hard. I don't regret it. I graduated as a pharmacist very young in 5 years. From high school, in 5 years, I became a pharmacist with a doctorate level degree, right? So a lot of people don't know that pharmacists have a doctorate level degree. And it typically takes about 8 years to become a pharmacist, right? 4 years undergrad and then 4 years of pharmacy school. I did it in 5 years, a little bit accelerated. So, I don't think I would regret it. But if you were to ask me today in 2024, would I want to be a pharmacist? Probably not.
Mhm.
If, let's say I was starting graduating, I'd probably go towards the nursing route if I want to be in California, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Makes sense. Now that you mention it, as a CRNA, if you work anywhere in the United States, you're making over $200,000 easy, but you also work fewer days per week than you would as a pharmacist. So that's a plus as well. However, I will say what you do is probably not, I don't know exactly what your day to day is like, but I'm guessing it's not as stressful as it is being a nurse or even a CRNA. Because, as a CRNA, you're intubating these patients, you're sedating them, and you have to be very careful with the amount of medication that you're sedating them with, like the dosing. You understand that as a pharmacist, right? However, as a CRNA, you're actually the one administering these medications, right? And you're doing this in real time, and you have to monitor the patient as you're administering these medications. So there's like a higher level of stress, I think, which is why they definitely why they get paid a lot more than we do, right? But just like you said, you can have a master's level degree or even a doctorate degree and become a CRNA. So the schooling would have probably been the same. The amount or the length of time that it took for you to become a pharmacist would have been probably the same amount of time that it would have taken you to become a CRNA or close to it.
Yeah, and like it's interesting because our day to day, like some people don't realize that during the nighttime, there's only like 2 pharmacists in the whole pharmacy, right? And then there's a lot more nurses, so we're more indirect, like but it's just more of like if a nurse is having a situation, they need something stat,
Yeah.
then we're getting 5 of those calls simultaneously, right? Because you have 5 patients crashing in the hospital, so that's when they call pharmacy. So that's when it's only stressful. But to your point, we're kind of more behind the scenes, so we don't see the patient crashing physically. It's just more we just hear it from the nurse typically who's requesting it, be able to triage it. But yes, we're not directly giving the medication, and we can prepare the medication, but ultimately it's the nurse that gives it. And if an error happens, then that's the risk and the liability and the pressure that goes along with being a nurse and a CRNA specifically.
Can you tell me what is your process like when you get a patient, let's say, who walks into the ER and is receiving CPR and needs like stat meds, or like, let's say it's a stroke patient, for example, that'll probably make more sense. And you got to prepare TNK, or I don't know what you guys give, if you give TPA or TNK, but how do you go about it? Like you receive a notification, I'm guessing, because it's like a hospital wide notification. Mm-hmm. What do you do from the moment you receive that notification to the moment you distribute the medication to the staff?
Yeah, so my hospital, we do have like ER pharmacists that help manage, but pretty much they call like a coach stroke, right? So So usually, patients coming in the ambulance and they're code stroke. And then when they get here, they're basically assessing the patient for if they qualify for tenecteplase or alteplase. And then as a pharmacist, you kind of know, because you're trying to think ahead, right? Like, okay, if they qualify, I have to prepare this tenecteplase or alteplase. If not, it's maybe aspirin, and going through that criteria. So it's just kind of like troubleshooting and going down the algorithm. But to be honest, like where the pharmacist gets the most value is most people know first, second line therapy. Doctors know that typically, or the mid-level practitioners know that. But it's when it's like that third, fourth, fifth line option and the drug interaction, that's when the pharmacist is more involved. But typically what I try to do is I try to be proactive in how I handle things. So like, let's say during a code, right, you're giving epinephrine, and then after epinephrine, maybe you do amiodarone, right? And then maybe it's back for epinephrine. So it's just helping you be proactive, right? And I feel like that kind of proactive mindset and thinking ahead, it translates very well to like real estate business, right? Like how can we think ahead to be proactive when we know things are coming? So that's how I kind of think about it. It's very systematic. You see the same stuff every day, right? Like being in the ED or even being in the normal floors. It's, a lot of like pneumonia, heart failure, DKA. After a while, you see the same stuff and it's almost like routine, but just being part of the team and, recommending doses and alternatives, that's really the main job of the pharmacist as being the medication expert and obviously helping with getting the medication to the nurse to give to the patient. So that's a lot of what we do. Not the most exciting, but, it's just another safety layer between the physician and the nurse.
And are you still working 5 days a week?
Yeah, so unfortunately, management, we work 5/8, and then plus we're a little bit on call. The pharmacists, they work 4/10s, the ones that report up to me, but some county hospitals, pharmacists work 3/12s. And I have thought about it because I went down the administrative route, so unfortunately, it's hard to be like 3/12s as a director of pharmacy because they want you there. But I have thought about it, where man, if I can be 3/12s, I basically have 4 days to like work on my side hustle, my side business, right? Which is basically more time and effort to do that. So that's something I'm thinking about, but it doesn't make sense right now. But maybe as I'm further along, after I paid off my Tesla, after I built up reserves, and after my real estate starts to cash flow more over time, I may take that step back. Because something, I'm making a video on this, but like something I've been contemplating is literally if I sell one of my single family homes in the Bay Area, one of them have about $800,000 of equity in it, right? So I can literally sell that and pay off my current house that I live in and own it free and clear, right? That's option one. Option two is I can take the $800,000 equity and I can pay off both my apartment complexes too, because my total loan's about $800,000. And imagine I own, 46 units that gross, I think maybe $26,000. And if you assume about 50% expense, that's 13K cash flow on just those. And then you remove your loan from that, your cash flow increases significantly. So I've kind of been like teeter-tottering between those two. Like, should I just keep it as is? Because leverage is that if I have 5 properties that each go by $100,000, you just made $500,000 versus if I own one property free and clear and it goes by $100,000, I only made $100,000. But then obviously you're a little bit more stressed owning 5 properties versus one free and clear. So this has kind of been the back and forth that I've been thinking about, now that I've kind of paused buying real estate for a little bit. So yeah, it's a tough one for me.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I mean, if you pay off your house though, or if you pay a large portion of your house, at least you don't have a mortgage anymore, right? And then you can just live mortgage free. So if anything, like let's say you have to reduce your hours at work, you can do that, right? Whereas if you were to like pay off the mortgages on those units that you own, I mean, you still have your mortgage, you still have to pay your mortgage. This is the place that you live. So if anything happens, you would have to sell your current home. I mean, I don't know, man. It's a tough one. It really is.
That's what I said. It's kind of like a privileged question to ask
Yeah.
myself. I know that full well. But yeah, to your point, like you will sleep. I mean, your basic expense in life is where you live, right?
Yeah.
If you can basically wipe that out and, the house that I would sell just breaks even, right? It's the first house that I own. So like I always have that move in my pocket. But when I'm still working, it doesn't make sense. But if I know, hey, I'm going to cut down my hours or, hey, I'm going to just leave my day job, then I can make that move, right? I can just take it and then just pay off this house. And all I'll be going for is, the HOA, the property tax, the insurance, which still almost $2,000 a month, but that's pretty reasonable, right? Like $2,000 a month is you can sleep well at night knowing you pay $2,000 a month at night. And if you lost your job, if your real estate doesn't do as well, you can still sustain. So it's something that I'm like pivoting towards, or like, whatever money I make through like my side businesses, maybe I'll just use that to dump towards paying off my primary residence. I thought about that too. Like if I somehow blow up and get to your level of YouTube, then and make all this money, then I would take it and throw it into my primary residence, right? So that's something I'm thinking because, well, a lot of people don't realize, and once again, it's privileged for me to say this, but when your net worth is like 6 million versus like even 10 million or 15 million, your quality life doesn't necessarily improve that much. But if you can start removing expenses off your plate, that's when your quality life will start to improve, right? So if I can remove my mortgage, if I can remove a car payment, if I can remove, max funding life insurance, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I'm trying to set myself up to be successful later. And like I said, the problem is I set a goal, but it changes every year because what I thought I wanted wasn't actually what I wanted after I experienced it. So that's what's kind of interesting about doing it. Because I was all about leverage. You talked to me 2, 3 years ago, leverage, leverage, leverage. Now I'm just like, well, don't be too leveraged, right? So it's interesting the different phases that you go through on the success journey.
Yeah, because if you had that entire net worth aggregated into, like, let's say the stock market or an index fund, you can always sell. You want to go on a vacation? Sell some of that. Go on a vacation. But with real estate, it's tied to the home or the property that the equity is in, right? So, like, the number sounds great. It's a high number when you have real estate. But if it were something that you could liquidate quickly, then it would feel more substantial. And right, like, I'm guessing that's probably how you feel. Like, if you could actually feel that number as opposed to just like see that number, you'd feel it a lot more, right?
Exactly. Like it's asset rich, cash poor, right? So like
Yeah,
I'm building a lot of wealth, but it doesn't feed me today.
yeah.
So that's what a lot of people don't realize. That's why it's a long term game, right? And if you notice all these real estate, gurus, there's a reason why they do multiple businesses, right? Is because they're trying to generate cash flow to then buy real estate to get the
Yeah.
tax benefits of that. But the problem with that too is you go on this like never ending rat circle race again, right? It's a different rat race where imagine if I have to constantly buy 2, 3 properties a year just to offset my W-2 income because I'm a real estate professional, but now I'm a slave to buying real estate, right? So that's why it's a fine balance, right? Like you want to find a balance, and the key is you want to, build income, but also have lower expense, right? So that's when I learned that I was just like, that's what YouTube's so amazing. Like YouTube is zero cost, right? Like I pay absolutely nothing besides a phone and uploading it. Wi-Fi. Everyone has a phone and Wi-Fi. So your expense is very little, but your upside is infinite, right? Versus real estate, like I put $500,000 into my mobile home park and I lost $100,000, right? And then even now, when I sold it, my money's still trapped because I have to carry a note on that mobile home park still. So I have $400,000 just sitting there trapped. I'm getting interest on it. Now I become the bank, but if I want to snap my fingers and say I want 450K, I can't, right? I have to wait for that. So it's not as much liquidity. And like I said, I could just sell everything and maybe after taxes, I'll have like, I don't know, 5 million. And if you do the 4% rule, I don't know what that is, but maybe that's probably more than my income. But I still feel like I'd be stressed, like just
That's
knowing
$20,000 a month, I'm guessing, something like that.
probably
Yeah.
around there. And that's enough, right? That's my fat fire number
Yeah.
to do that.
So, okay, we have a couple more questions, but before we ask the last question, because this will end the call, I want you to go over, because you said you just bought a house. I want you to go over your expenses and your income so we can like kind of gauge what it's like. And you don't have to give me your specific salary as a pharmacist, but just give me some rough numbers, monthly budget wise.
Yeah, I'm pretty transparent on my salary. It's funny because a lot of my pharmacists underneath me, they found my YouTube channel. So I don't talk about my income on my channel, but I'll talk about on your channel unless they cross-pollinate to yours. They literally stalked me on LinkedIn, found my
That's
LinkedIn, and then it led to my YouTube. So everyone knows I own a bunch of real estate. I'm actually very low key about it at work.
yeah.
But on YouTube, I'm pretty transparent about it, right? So it was hilarious to see that. Like everyone knows I own a bunch of real estate, and like 2 people approached me about it, but no one else really mentions it because people think, oh, he's rich. He doesn't need to work. He doesn't need to try. They have a negative feelings towards you,
Mhm.
right? And so that's why I don't really talk about it at work, right? Unless they ask me, I might talk a little bit about it, but for the most part, I keep it related to work. So it's kind of funny. So, okay, so I bought this primary residence. It's a new build. It's a Lennar new build. So Lennar's been building homes everywhere across California, NorCal, SoCal, everywhere. And what I love about new builds is that it's so easy to buy. You literally walk up, say, here's my offer, no negotiations, sign the contract, it's yours. The hard part is qualifying for the loan. So for me, I had to do a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac loan, which is a government-backed loan. And when you own as much real estate as me and own businesses as much as me that are like cash flow negative on paper or negative on paper, it's hell trying to qualify, right? And I make $260,000, right, on my newest job as a pharmacy director, which I think a little bit less than a CRNA. And keep in mind, I'm at the top of my profession, right? And I'm only making 260, or not only, but like 260 is your top profession. But despite that, and my fiance, who's on the loan too, she makes about 180, right? So collectively, we're making like, what was that, 450K?
440.
Yeah, 440. And had such a hard time to qualify. And I literally told my loan officer, if me and her do not qualify, who can qualify? right? And keep in mind, we're doing 5% down, right? Because I'm a little bit cash poor right now. So, we bought this for $900,000. We put 5% down. So it's about, 45K down. But what's amazing about this deal is because when you do buy a new build, you get builder credit. So they gave me $45,000 in builder credit. So in a weird way, I almost put zero down. I put $45,000 down, but I got 45K in builder credit. And you use that credit to make upgrades, right? So for example, it covered my closing costs, which was like $9,000, 1%. It covered my solar panels because California requires you to get solar panel on new builds. So it paid for my solar panel, which is $11,000. I got flooring on the second level, LVP flooring. So that was another $12,000. So it covered all these expenses for me, which is really nice. But if you break down my loan, I have about 6.5% interest rate, which is the highest one I have. I have an HOA of about 580, which is pretty high, right? But it's a gated community. They're working on a pool, working on a gym, the security guard. It's a really nice community. Around me, there's a Toll Brother homes. So Toll Brothers, they build the luxury mansions, and all those are between 3 to 5 million. So my house is $900,000, but I'm surrounded by $5 million homes.
Yeah.
And I think my all-in costs, if you include utilities, it's about $7,400. I think my principal and interest is about $5,600, I want to say. HOA is about $600. And then my home insurance is pretty cheap because it's just the interior. It's about $500 a year. And then you have property tax, which is roughly about 1,000-ish a month. So that's kind of my cost. And PMI, because I put 5% down, we've paid about $180 of that. But what's crazy with new builds is that we bought it at 900. It appraised at 925, and we bought it at phase 4. So every phase, they jack up the price. Right? So phase 5, it goes up by 10K. Phase 6, another 10K. 7, another 10K. 8, another 10K. And then that's only half the development, and they're going to do the other half, right? So, once they sell more phases, I'm getting instant equity on the deal, right? So that's why I really like the deal. But I will say the loan officer hated me because my tax return was so complicated. They wanted everything on me. And I was telling them, okay, if you looked at me back in 2023, I was cash flow negative because I'm putting money to renovate and stabilize my apartments. Fast forward to today, I'm cash flowing 8 to 12K. My take home for my W-2, it's probably 12 to 13K. And then my fiance is taking home 8K, right? So I'm okay, we're literally taking home
21,000.
Yeah, 21,000 of just our W-2. Plus you add my real estate income in there. That's 30,000 plus.
Yes.
You're telling me I can't afford $700 a month, right? And our credit scores are 800, both of us.
Yeah.
I just said, if we don't qualify, you're going to sell none of these homes because I'm the perfect buyer, minus my real estate that I have a lot of, but it's stabilized. So, close on it today. But yeah, I told him dude, this is the most stressful loan. And I've bought apartments, right?
Yeah.
So it was very interesting doing that. And I just told my fiance, I'm well, luckily we only buy one, right? So I plan on staying here, living in this house for a long time. It's a great location. It's near both of our jobs, midpoint. It's a nice community, right? So I can't complain. And, eventually when we have kids, it's a great school district too. So it's a long-term play for us.
Well, I think you guys, this is probably what, 1/6 of your net income, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about just the property, the home that you own. So it's 17% or something like that of your net income. That's amazing. For people who are watching and they think about, damn, that's $7,000 a month. They don't think about the overall picture, which is you're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So even though you're spending a lot on this mortgage, you still are making enough where you're going to have $23,000 left over after you pay for your mortgage to spend on other items. So,
Exactly.
Man, I think it's a good choice for you guys, especially considering the fact that you said there's Toll Brothers that's directly in the same neighborhood, and those homes are going for millions of dollars. Yeah, you guys made a good choice by buying this house, in my opinion.
Yeah, like you said, even if I cash flow, let's say $8,000 on a bad month, that's enough to cover my mortgage. So in a weird way, my real estate portfolio is self-sustaining itself. And that's what I learned the key is you want your real estate to self-sustain itself, and then you use your active income from your job, from your business to then live your life. If you can do that, it opens up many options, right? So that's what I've achieved then, so I'm fortunate to be in that position. But yes, it does come with a lot of stress, a lot of headache, and probably aged myself over the past 3 years scaling. But yeah, that's the beauty about real estate, right? Is you want to self-sustain itself. If I had to live off of it, like you said, if I had kids in the family, I'd be a little stressed stress doing it. So I'd rather just almost just work that like W-2 for now until like my YouTube or something else takes over. At that point, by all means, I would walk away from my W-2 if that many coaching calls and my YouTube was just that blown up, right? Of course I would walk away. But until then, it has to beat my 260K salary, which is hard, right? It's hard to be. And if you factor in my health benefits and all that, that's another 30% on top of that, right? So
Yeah.
if you factor in my total compensation package with benefits and all that stuff, it's more than 260K, right? It's almost like close to $400,000. And
Wow.
people don't
Yeah.
realize that, right? So I have to replace $400,000 of just my income if I want to replace. And eventually my fiance, she's going to cut down to part-time too, right? So I have to
Mm.
cover her half of the income as well. So, that's why I choose to work while building other businesses as I slow down in real estate.
Yeah. Makes total sense, which is going to lead me to the last question there. Do you have a course, mentorship, or one-on-one coaching? Because you did mention you do coaching. So do you have any of these?
Yeah, so I have all the above. I have coaching, I have a course, and I have a mentorship program. So a lot of people were really resonated with the fact that, I was able to scale a real estate portfolio while working full time. If you see a lot of the people, selling courses, they made their money from real estate and now they're living off the money from the courses. But for me, I'm a little bit more in the weeds because obviously I still work at W-2. It's very relatable, right? And a lot of people, they own a few single family homes and they want to scale to that next level of multifamily. So a lot of people have reached out to me in that aspect. I just started off as me just sharing my journey and then not realizing that what I did was an anomaly, if that makes sense. I thought it was just normal what I did, to be honest. But then once I started sharing it and I started to learn that, like this is something people want to learn how to do. So, a lot of people kind of want to did what I have done. And then obviously, if you learn from people, like same with your coaching program, if you want to shortcut your path to success, then you learn from other people, right? And it's just a matter, do you value time or do you value money? If money is an issue, then, mentorship's not the best option. But if you value your time and you want to expedite your journey, then that's when you do courses and mentorship, right? So, just like in nursing school, pharmacy school, we learn from those 1 year ahead of us, right? Very natural. When I was a first year in pharmacy school, I learned from a second year. When I was a second year, I learned from a third year. When I'm a new first year pharmacist, I learned from a second year pharmacist. So it's kind of that layered learning. So I've always been indoctrinated in that program. So I did that myself and I scaled a lot of real estate. And then now I'm, helping others do that. Once again, it translates very well. I'm in pharmacy leadership, right? So I manage we have 180 staff in my hospital. So I'm already coaching, pharmacists and technicians. So it was very natural for me to coach in real estate. It's a little easier to coach in real estate, in my opinion, than to coach a pharmacist and a pharmacy technician, right? Because the hospital is a lot more complicated and there's a lot more nuance versus real estate. It's a lot simpler in the big picture of things. So it's been nice. And for me, I love to help and teach people. That's kind of me naturally. I was doing it for free. And then people started coming up to me saying, "Oh, do you have coaching?" And I was like, "What? Like people pay for this?" So I didn't even know that was an option, to be honest. I was just giving out information for free and people at work got annoyed at me because I was talking about real estate. And then that's what led me to sharing on YouTube. I was like, oh, someone wants to listen to me. And then even my fiance was sick of listening to me. So she was like, dude, just talk on YouTube. Someone will listen to you. I was like, okay, it was just an outlet for me, to be honest.
I love that. So where do they go if they want to find you?
Yeah, I can drop my link tree, which leads to my YouTube. I do have all the social media platforms. If you typically search my name, Stephen D. Nguyen or Making Multifamily Money, you'll find me. But I'm most active on YouTube. I post one video every day. It's roughly about 10 minutes. And I'm usually talking about what I'm doing or what I'm reflecting on most recently to share my journey and to kind of give more transparency as to the wealth building journey and what's really like to, own as much real estate as I do and to have as much wealth as I do while working at W-2. So I hope to kind of build that transparency because I feel like there's a lack of transparency in a lot of YouTube channels, which is what I love about your channel as well. You're highly transparent in your salary and when you're transparent, it attracts a lot of hate, right? So definitely know that route, but someone has to do it. So I'm glad that we're on that journey.
If you enjoyed this episode, but you want to watch the first one where I interviewed Steven about his 90 rental units, then click right here.